and thank you for joining our Food Distribution Program webinar on U.S. Department of Agriculture Foods Complaints and Recalls. My name is Amy Bell, Child Nutrition Consultant with the California Department of Education Food Distribution Program, and I will be hosting the webinar today. During this webinar, you will learn when, why, and how to file a USDA Foods complaint, as well as hear some information that will help in the event of a recall that involves USDA Foods. Let's get started. Today we will cover complaints related to USDA Foods, Department of Defense Fresh Fruit and Vegetables, also known as DoD Fresh, and complaints that involve processed end products that are made with USDA Foods. First of all, Title VII Code of Federal Regulations, Parts 250-15D requires complaints regarding product quality or specifications or suggested product improvements be submitted to the USDA for tracking purposes. The USDA has a team of 7 program specialists assigned to handle USDA Foods complaints. On average, the team has about 40 complaint cases under some stage of investigation every day and usually resolves complaints within 28 days. In school year 2015-16, the USDA complaint team received 575 complaints from across the nation. In the same year, the USDA hosted a webinar regarding complaints to explain the importance of reporting issues. During the current 2016-17 school year, the USDA complaint team has seen a 50% increase in the number of complaints filed through the month of January. As halfway through the school year, they were just above 425 total complaints from recipients nationwide. This is good news from the perspective that agencies are taking the time to file complaints with the goal of reducing food loss and waste and improving vendor performance and products. In fact, on average, the USDA saves and recovers over $1.5 million a school year resolving complaints. As I mentioned, the ultimate goal of the USDA Foods complaint team is to reduce food and financial losses. Unusable food is wasted money for the USDA and schools. With each complaint, the USDA is working with their vendors to resolve issues and find solutions. These could be as simple as packaging changes to make items easier to open or changing pallets to alleviate crushing cans. The USDA also uses complaints to find trends and evaluate products. For example, several years ago, the USDA made changes to the spaghetti sauce specifications after analyzing numerous complaints regarding the sauce's watery consistency. The USDA also uses complaints as a way to monitor vendor performance, as in the case of dried beans with large amounts of debris. The USDA makes decisions about future contracts based on the data gathered from the complaint team and rely on the complaints to continue to improve the items they are able to provide. Most USDA foods have a 6-month warranty from the date they are shipped from the vendor and delivered to the destination. That means that the goal for USDA foods is that they are consumed within 6 months or less. However, some items have a shorter shelf life, such as string cheese and yogurt. The bottom line is that storing or saving food for a rainy day is the wrong mindset. Remember, the longer food is left in storage, the higher the likelihood of food loss, and with food loss, there may be disposal fees. A food loss wastes the money that has been paid to store the food, to dispose of the food, and to replace the food you plan to use. If those are not enough reasons, USDA vendors give priority to foods under warranty, and there is a higher likelihood the item can be replaced. Let me start by saying that complaints may be filed by recipient agencies, private distributors, or processors for any of the reasons that I'm about to mention. For groups that receive product directly from a USDA vendor, it is recommended a complaint be filed when the seal on a truck is broken or missing, when the vendor fails to make a delivery appointment, when a load shifts and product is damaged, or when the product is delivered at the wrong temperature. For all other USDA Foods recipients, complaints should be filed when there is a safety issue, such as when an injury or illness occurred after consuming a product. Complaints should also be filed for product quality issues, such as taste, odor, or color. As an example, a school filed a complaint because some of their applesauce seemed discolored. The vendor and the complaint team determined that several different varieties of apples were used within a production run, which resulted in varying shades of yellow. It was determined the product was safe to consume. Complaints should be filed for packaging damage and issues such as leaks or seals. The USDA received many complaints about the strong seals on the applesauce cups. The USDA took the problem to the vendor, and the vendor fixed it, and now the applesauce cups are easier to open. Complaints should be filed when non-edible items such as insects, bones, metal, or plastic pieces are found in products. Vendors will often inspect their entire line when a machine part is found in an item to identify where the machine part came from. Vendors have been known to dismantle their entire production line to find the empty screw socket. If you do find a foreign object, it is advisable to photograph and save the object. Many times the vendor wants the object sent to them to investigate. Complaints about consistency or performance should be filed too. Often, specifications need to be modified to improve a product. Some examples of complaints that resulted in specification changes were the spaghetti sauce that was watery, cheese that didn't melt, and tortillas that often broke. The USDA reviews all feedback, so if a USDA product is not meeting your expectations, take the time to let us and the USDA know. Filing a USDA Foods complaint is important when safety is an issue, especially when an injury or illness occurs. Filing a complaint will allow you to request a replacement or receive reimbursement if a product is still under warranty. Filing a complaint offers the USDA information for trend analysis and helps the USDA focus on repetitive occurrences and safety issues. The data the USDA collects from complaints allows them to pinpoint specific products and vendors with problems and prompts the USDA to review their bid specifications and product formulations. Ultimately, complaints help improve the quality of USDA foods. Okay, you are ready to file a USDA Foods complaint. To make it easier for anyone receiving USDA Foods to submit a complaint, we have a USDA Foods complaint form that is located on the CDE website at the link listed on the screen. This form can be downloaded, completed, and either faxed or emailed to the Food Distribution Program at fooddistribution@cde.ca.gov. We will take your information and submit a formal complaint to the USDA. So now let's talk about what is needed when you file a complaint. Remember, more is better. First, we need the sales order number to file the complaint electronically with the USDA. If you receive USDA Foods directly from a USDA Foods vendor, the sales order number is on the shipping paperwork that comes with the delivery. The sales order number is helpful because the USDA uses this number to identify which vendor produced the product and when it was shipped. If you receive your USDA Foods from the state, you may contact your assigned distribution center to obtain the sales order number. And if you use a private distributor to deliver your USDA Foods, your distributor will have this information. We will also need to know the vendor's name, product name, and item code number. If you can provide any identifying information such as a lot number, pack date, or use by date, these are also very helpful. When you file the complaint, you will also need to provide a description of the issue and the quantity of unacceptable product. I know it can be tedious to inspect your remaining inventory, but it is important to know if it is an isolated incident or something more widespread. It is also critical to let us know if any injuries or illnesses have occurred after consuming the product. And finally, please let us know if you have specific expectations regarding the outcome of the complaint. For instance, do you want replacement product, entitlement credit, or is your complaint for informational purposes only? after you file your complaint with the FDP, it's advisable not to dispose of any food that is involved in the complaint prior to guidance and authorization from the USDA. If you are at all concerned that the food involved in the complaint could potentially contaminate other items, please call us so that we can expedite the disposal approval process. In addition to the written information that you provide, clear pictures are helpful when filing a complaint. Adding a point of reference is always valuable, especially when a foreign object is found. I like these photos that were sent to us. A ruler or a coin is a great way to identify the size of an object. Also remember to save any foreign objects that may need to be inspected. Please note that you are sending pictures. They must be submitted electronically in order for us to forward them to the USDA. Likewise, sending photos of the pallet, case, label, and or the individual packaging label can help the USDA and the vendor complete the story in order to research the complaint more thoroughly. Additionally, photos are helpful when there's a widespread issue. In these photos, mold, bugs, and poorly sealed cases further show the extent of potential problems recipients may see. Although these are worst-case scenarios, they are the minority, as most of the $1.4 billion worth of USDA Foods is of the highest quality. And one final note on photos. It is very helpful to literally point out the problem to the USDA complaint team and the vendor. Not only could the USDA tell that mold was an issue, but under closer examination, they determined the reason for the crushed cans was poorly constructed pallets. Just remember that sending digital photos can help the USDA and vendor piece together the puzzle to solve a complaint. All right, let's move on and talk about how to handle produce you receive from the DoD Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program. With all produce, your staff should be inspecting produce upon receipt and rejecting any produce that is unacceptable before they sign off on any paperwork prior to the produce delivery driver leaving. If this does not happen or you notice a problem within a few days, you can file a complaint. Depending on how you order and receive your DoD produce will determine how you file your complaint. Let's first talk about recipient agencies who order their DoD produce directly through the DoD's Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Order Receipt System, FFAVORS site. Agencies are required to use the receipt function in the FFAVORS web system to verify a DoD delivery within 7 days, and agencies should also report any complaints at that time. The receipt function allows you to note the number of cases that were received in poor condition or damaged. Reporting the complaint in FFAVORS in a timely manner will allow an adjustment to be made to your invoice. If you discover a problem after 7 days of receipt, the FFAVORS will not allow you to edit your receipt, and so you must contact the DoD Customer Support Specialist who can edit your receipt in the FFAVORS. In addition to reporting the problem in FFAVORS, the prime vendor, the DoD Customer Support Specialist, and the FTP staff should be made aware of the issue via email. This will ensure a speedy resolution. The vendor will let you know if the product can be disposed of or picked up, and if the product will be replaced or a credit will be issued. On a final note, the DoD vendor often requests to see photos of the problem and the packaging in order for them to research the problem with their supplier. Photos should be sent to the vendor, the DoD Customer Support Specialist, and the FDP as well. Since the state distribution centers receive DoD produce directly from the DoD prime vendor, our state distribution center staff inspect produce before it is shipped out. However, there may be a time when a school that receives DoD produce from the State Distribution Center wishes to file a DoD complaint. If you receive your DoD produce through one of our state distribution centers, you can report the complaint within 10 days of receiving the product by completing the overshort and damaged report in the Child Nutrition Information and Payment System, also known as CNIPS. The OS&D report can be accessed from the Orders tab in the CNIPS, and it will allow you to report the number of cases that were in poor condition. After the SDC staff receive your report, they will contact you regarding disposal and determine if the product will be replaced or a credit will be issued. If you discover a problem 10 days after receipt, the CNIPS will not allow you to file an OS&D report, and so you should contact the State Distribution Center staff who can assist you with a resolution. Again, photos of the problem and the packaging can assist the DoD vendor research the problem with their supplier. Since I mentioned the overshort and damage report form, I want to tell you how to report overages, shortages, or damages related to your delivery of food from the state distribution centers. This is a screenshot of the OS&D report that is available in the CNIPS. The purpose of the OS&D report is to notify the FDP that there was a problem with your delivery. For example, if you ordered 5 cases of applesauce but 3 cases were crushed, you are able to inform the distribution center electronically. The CNIPS will allow recipient agencies to report any problems within 10 days of delivery. After that point in time, you will need to contact the distribution center to report any problems. The CNIPS will display all the foods shipped on the order along with the item number, a description of the item, the pack size, and the number of units shipped. The last 2 columns are for you to add units received and/or units damaged. At the bottom of the report, there is a text box for comments for you to add any additional information that you think would be helpful. The CNIPS will alert the distribution center staff of the report, and the staff will work to resolve the issue and, if necessary, make adjustments to the invoice. All right, let's talk about complaints regarding end products made with USDA Foods. There have been a few instances when we have been contacted by schools that have a complaint about a USDA Foods processed end product purchased from an approved processor. Although this is not a common practice, the USDA does appreciate communication about products that come from processors approved to process USDA Foods. The first step is to determine if the problem with the USDA processed end product is a result of a USDA food. If the USDA foods contained in the product is the reason for the complaint, then the process of filling an USDA Foods complaint that we previously discussed would be followed. An example of this would be rocks and dried beans that were used by the processor. The problem originated with the USDA food that was used as an ingredient. If it is determined that the USDA food is not the problem, for example, plastic in the breading of chicken tenders, then the entity that signed the contract with the processor should work with the processor to come to an agreeable solution. If for some reason the processor is uncooperative in resolving the complaint, then the FDP should be contacted. The FDP will involve the USDA to determine responsibility. At that time, if the USDA finds the processor at fault, the USDA may collect on the bond that all processors are required to post with USDA to cover the USDA foods involved in the complaint. It is worth the effort to submit complaints to the USDA. The USDA does investigate and does take action. In fact, the USDA recently shared some of their success stories from complaints that led to positive changes with USDA foods. Some complaints result in packaging changes. For example, a rice vendor redesigned his packing line to address bagged rice that consistently leaked. Another success was the example that I used earlier of the applesauce cup manufacturer who had lids with a robust foil seal kids could not open. And so the vendor addressed and corrected the problem. Specifications may also be changed as a result of complaints. For example, the USDA changed the individual peanut butter specification to ensure that the packaging was easier to open after they received numerous complaints about the tough packaging. The USDA also changed the specifications on cheese so that shredded cheese would consistently melt. And sometimes complaints result in a vendor being penalized. This happened after the USDA received complaints about the whole grain-rich pasta. The USDA discovered that the vendor's pasta was not compliant to the bid specifications, and so the vendor was held accountable and subsequently corrected the issue. So please take the time to file a complaint. If the USDA is unaware of your concerns or that foods are not meeting your expectations, they cannot make the necessary improvements. As you have just learned, they want to continuously improve the foods they offer to ensure the food they provide is safe, wholesome, and tasty. We've been talking a lot about complaints, but perhaps you do not have a complaint, but have a suggestion for new packaging or a new seasoning profile or for a new food. Well, the USDA wants to hear from you and encourages your feedback. You can provide suggestions, comments, and recommendations directly to the USDA Food Distribution Program by emailing them at the address listed on the slide. You can even let them know when a product exceeds your expectations. Now I want to take just a few moments to address food recalls. A food recall is an action to remove food products from the market when there is a reason to believe the products may be unsafe, adulterated, or mislabeled. Recalls are taken to protect the public. In the event of a food recall, the CDE will communicate recall information via email. Our goal is to relay accurate information to you as soon as possible. Our notification will include as much information as the issuer provides us. We typically provide the item name, item number, manufacturer's name, lot codes, production dates, where the product was shipped, and the reason for the recall. In the unfortunate event that we receive confirmation from the USDA that a USDA food is affected by a recall, we will let you know. As I said previously, our goal is to relay accurate information to you as soon as possible. Our notification will include as much information as the manufacturer and/or the USDA provides us. If the recalled USDA food was shipped by our state distribution centers, we can identify the agencies that were shipped the recalled food. If the food is shipped to a private distributor or processor, they will have record of agencies who received the recalled item, and you should be contacted by those entities as well. Recalled USDA food should be isolated and labeled so the food cannot be mistakenly used. Agencies should conduct an inventory to determine the amount of product served remaining in inventory at schools, warehouses, and with their distributors, and any food that has been redirected for further processing. Agencies should return inventory information to the state as soon as possible, ideally in 48 hours or less, since we are required by the USDA in Title VII Code of Federal Regulations, Section 250.15c, to identify how much recalled food has been consumed and how much is still in storage. So please report back to us as soon as possible the status of your recalled inventory on the forms we provide. During the USDA Foods recall, the USDA will issue further guidance and information, including procedures or instructions for disposal, replacement, and reimbursement of specific costs incurred as a result of such actions. Agencies that must destroy or dispose of recalled USDA food will need to report how the product was disposed and the costs related to the disposal, including backup documentation such as receipts. Typically, reimbursable costs for USDA Foods recalls are limited to storage, transportation, and processing. It is important to note that no two recalls are alike. Therefore, reimbursement costs may vary for different recalls. The CDE will send detailed instructions and forms for reporting cases destroyed and costs incurred. After receiving these forms, the CDE will submit a final report to the USDA of product destroyed and request reimbursement for those costs incurred. After the USDA and vendor review the claim, the reimbursement or replacement process can begin. In most cases, the vendor or processor is responsible for replacing the affected product and reimbursing federal, state, and recipient agencies for allowable costs incurred as a result of the recall. The USDA will request that vendors compensate those states that have submitted timely documentation. Should payment from the vendor not occur, the USDA may reimburse the state and recipient agencies for specified costs and seek reimbursement of those expenditures from the vendor or processor. This entire process can take up to 6 months or longer, depending on the extent of the recall. To wrap this up, please read the instructions and complete forms thoroughly and timely to help us close out a recall as soon as possible. We would appreciate it. For those that need the School Nutrition Program Professional Standards credit information, we have provided it to you. If you have questions regarding this presentation or general questions regarding the FDP, you may contact me, Amy Bell, or Sherry Tam by either of the methods listed on the slide. You may also email questions and comments directly to the Food Distribution Program at the address listed on the screen. We thank you for spending the afternoon with us and hope you enjoyed today's presentation. This now concludes our webinar. Thank you so much for attending.